Hey YouTube, it's Dimitri, and today we're going to talk a little bit about software in the banking industry. So this is a weird topic, and I want to throw a shout out here. Thank you to Mark, my colleague. We had this discussion, and he mentioned this would be a good idea for a video. I completely agreed with him, and so I'm going to talk about this a little bit. So for those of you that don't know, the banking industry in the last, 15, 20 years here is solidly based on the software called SAS. SAS is an expensive product that banks pay for, and it's a procedural-based language to do statistical analysis of your data. So why have banks been using SAS? One, there were not open source software or other kind of competing software that was as good as SAS in the past. So yes, there's MATLAB and there's like SPSS and all that. But SAS as a corporation has done a really good job at providing services to these banks. So they provide like support. So if you have an issue, you can call them, you can talk to them. A lot of the money that you pay for the software is paying for this support that you get. All of their procedures and everything are well documented. So you can go online, you can search like Proc-Arima, Proc Bar Class, all these different procedures you want, and it will give you a bunch of information on it, all from the official SAS website. You do not have to go and find like a third-party website to do it. Something else I've noticed about SAS, which I really like, is that when I type something in, so for example, I'm doing like a regression and I do proc-reg, and the output that comes out is everything I would expect to see as a statistician. So in other languages, Python, R, a lot of times you run it, and then you have to call specific pieces that you want. Like, oh, I want, the estimates and the p-values and the standard errors, and I want to see the VIF. And so SAS has this really nice, easy to use, easy to learn kind of language style. It gives you everything you want. I just think it's a really well-made package. However, where this kind of falters now is that, well, SAS is super expensive, right? So banks are buying all these different licenses. The second issue is training. So yes, SAS is easy to learn. I think it is much easier to learn than other languages. But that being said, most students at most universities do not have access to SAS. I know at the University of Michigan, I think we had 5 licenses in the engineering department, and that was it. So we had a class of 30 people. If you wanted to use SAS, you had to go onto these virtual computers and hope that one of the licenses was open and you could use it. So training students in school to be prepared for the job isn't really feasible. And yes, I know there are universities out there now who are pushing SAS as they realize it's a big tool and it helps you get jobs in different areas and industries. But that being said, SAS is expensive. There's not a lot of people trained in it. And those are kind of the downsides for SAS in itself, including really a lack of tool sets for machine learning, data science. They take a little longer to get going on the development side and adding procedures. And I completely understand this because, SAS has so much documentation, so much rigor. It's one of the reasons banks like it, is it's dependable and gives you the exact same answer every single time. So kind of throwing this into a comparison here, right? Python and R are probably the 2 biggest competitors of SAS right now. They are booming. They're being used in the tech industry and a bunch of other industries. They're great because they're free. You can do a lot of different analyses in them. Like there's packages built from different groups of people, so it's all readily available. You don't have to regenerate, a new process or procedure. Or in SAS's case, if SAS doesn't have that ability, like neural networks, for example, how would you input that into R and Python? No worries, there's a package made for that. And again, the training for hiring people is awesome because a lot of people are already trained in R and Python through graduate school or even undergraduate, so they are ready to go. So finding talent that can help you and train you in that sense is readily available, whereas SAS doesn't really have that. However, the biggest fault, in my opinion, with both R and Python is the fact that they're package-based. So when you go to do some type of regression, say I'm using package A and my colleague is using package B, we generate 2 different models, same inputs, same modeling and everything, but your estimates are slightly different, right? A lot of people in different industries and stuff are gonna say, oh, who really cares, right? The regression was 1.775 and the other one was 1.772. It's close enough. I don't know what the big deal is. So in banking context, right, that difference could be the difference of like $10 or $20 million. So as a bank, when you say, well, is it worth losing 10 to $20 million? And which package is right? You know, which one's more accurate? Well, we don't really know, and there's really nobody to actually back these packages, right? You can email the creators and you can try to find out, you know, all this information on why they're slightly different. And yes, you could do that. But at the end of the day, it's not very consistent. Where SAS, I can call them on the phone and pick up the phone or email them. I've even complained before on Twitter. I think it was Twitter, Facebook, I don't know. I complained briefly like, SAS, you know, just causes so many headaches. And they actually reached out to me and were like, hey, we're really sorry. What can we help you with? So the service is unparalleled in SAS compared to any of these other, you know, open source software. I personally think if banks are going to use Python and R, and yes, right now, I'm not going to mention names, but there are big banks that are pushing to only use R, and there are other banks pushing to use Python. That being said, though, they're going to have to standardize their packages, right? They're going to have to create a package, which isn't hard to do, but it's a package of other packages that have everything packaged into one, you know, set of tools that this bank uses. If not, you're going to have this mismatch issue. This is going to cause validation issues. This is going to cause issues with monetary value, so losses, expected gains, even like issues with like discrimination within credit policy, right? Somebody ran some model, somebody implemented a different model, some consumer got some score and it differed from somebody else's score, and then it was like, oh, we made a mistake somewhere and it wasn't implemented correctly, right? There's a lot of kind of interesting issues that could occur with open source in the sense that it's not as vetted and as rigorous and as one-way pathed as SAS is as a whole. And I'm by no means saying that SAS is like the solution to everything. I have my issues with SAS and I complain about them constantly at work. But again, I actually like using it. I think it's a good tool. It's perfect for the banking industry. Open source, I think, has a lot of potential and opportunity, but there does need to be more regulation, more official, you know, setting up of libraries and packages for banks. And I think banks are going to have to take this on their own. And that leads us kind of to the next one, which is my colleague thought, you know, he thinks the opposite. So he thinks that the route necessarily won't go that we need to be so accurate in banking. He thinks the flip side will occur, which is, you know, regulators will say, well, you know, parameters are within so much, and banks will expect to have some amount of error in the modeling. And so it'll kind of be a well-accepted path. Yes, this is possible. I don't think this is how it's going to go, but there are people that do think that this is going to be a deregulation kind of moment, and that moving to open source will be kind of a freeing opportunity for banking, if there's no better way to say that. So, and then to touch on kind of this last point of the video here, which is going to be the cost of switching, and a lot of people don't understand this. So, SAS isn't just a language for programming statistics. SAS provides software for other applications, for example, for tracking inventory of models. So it's used on the model governance side as well. When you have all of these systems integrated into one software, one package, one process, all your employees are trained on this one system, switching over to something else is going to be really, really challenging and very costly for banks and other corporations, right? So if you have, I don't know, say 20 people that are doing model development and they're all trained to develop in SAS, and you want to switch them to R, how do you do that, right? You can't just force everybody and say, oh, we're all going to do R today, because all of a sudden now you have 20 models, you have deadlines and timings for regulations. These models have to be finished on this date. If you're already understaffed, right, this is going to be a huge hassle, and a lot of banks are very lean right now, so we don't have a lot of extra people to do the self-learning. So being able to switch over to R is going to be costly on the training side. It's going to be costly on the sense that you're going to have to switch systems and you're going to have issues and errors. And for banks, you know, money is huge. Money is the big focus here. Making some mistake can cost a bank millions of dollars, like instantly, overnight. And yet a lot of people I don't think really realize this, but people in management and banking do. They see this, right? They see the rise of R and Python. They see the advantages, the flexibility that it provides. But there also is that cost associated with switching from SAS to something else. And don't forget here, right, when you move over, you would save a bunch of money from licensing and not having to pay SAS anymore. But at the same time, you still have to train all those employees, you still have to manage all the systems. it's just a huge mess in general, and that's going to be the challenge for banking from switching from SAS to Python and R. So just to wrap this up with a quick note, you're wondering, right, which language should I learn, right? Dimitri, you're telling me that SAS is great and wonderful, but I can't learn it because it's not really available to students. And then you're saying R and Python are great and wonderful, and banks might be going that direction, but it might be a while before they get there because, you know, they have to do all this transitioning and regulation and processing and testing. You know, what should I do? So in my opinion, I think out of the open source languages, I think Python is hands down far better than R. I'm not going to argue with people on here about this. They're going to go on and on about how great R is. R doesn't follow a lot of generic programming practices. It struggles with large sets of data. In the banking side, so forget investing, if you on credit side, we're dealing with 500 gigabytes plus of data. So huge sets. R can't handle that. You have to sample down, you have to do a bunch of stuff. It can just be a headache. The way the language works is not the same as other languages. I'm not a big fan of it. It's a personal opinion. But if you can learn Python, I think the skills learned in programming in Python are easily applicable to SAS. I think they're easily applicable to going into C++ or C#. So I think learning Python in itself and learning the structure and the thought process behind doing the programming is far more beneficial in Python. I think it is far more flexible in the sense that you can kind of treat it like a procedural programming language. You can treat it like object-oriented, right? It's malleable in the way it functions and works. I think Python is the way to go if you're wanting to learn a language. If you want to just kind of touch up on R, yeah, you can jump in. I'm going to do some videos in R as well, just because it is probably the most common language in statistics departments for graduate studies that I have seen. So a lot of people are going to be using R in general. I mean, picking a language isn't crucial, right? If you learn Python or you learn R, it's not going to make you succeed or fail in your career. I think switching from R to any language is going to be a difficult going back and forth. But learning Python, I think, is a very valuable tool and skill to have. And even learning R, it might take you a little longer to switch into a new language like SAS if you need to. But if you can really program as a programmer, so not just functionally getting results, but if you can understand what you're doing and how to get results and how to manipulate data, I think that will be crucial for you as a student and even as a professional if you're looking to learn a new language. So anyways, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, until next time.